Hi, this is Kwan doing this video with a little bit of a heavy heart about a commentary on Mothership of an article that was just released today, right? So the title of the article is "Why Are Singaporean Anti-Vaxxers Pretending They Live in a Different Country?" The author is Sulaiman Daud, written today, October 13. So the TLDR of this article is basically to just say why are there still anti-vaxxers? Do they not know that Singapore is a country that has very strict laws? That there are a lot of actually data that supports vaccines, and then why are they still refusing to take the vaccine? So let's just start off with some of the things that I agree with the author, right, Mr. Daud or Mr. Sulaiman. So I do agree that somewhere in the middle of the article it talks about side effects. So I fully agree with what he has stated here, that the cases of vaccine injury, that means when you take the vaccine, there are adverse reactions. This number is very low. In the article, it states that it's 0.2% of people who are actually seriously have some serious adverse effects that do die from it. So 0.2% of a very small number, which is very, very small. So the vaccine in general, the COVID vaccine in general, very safe. A lot of data because there's just so many people that has taken the vaccine, and the number of people who have severely been affected by it very low. In Singapore, we had one guy, a pretty young guy. After the first dose, he went to do some weightlifting, and then he had some very serious reaction. I think that's about the worst one that we have heard in the news. But if you go by anecdotes, you hear that there are people who have passed away, but maybe the doctors are unwilling to classify it as a vaccine injury, that means death from the vaccine. So it's a bit unclear on how many people have actually died from the vaccine, but there are definitely people who have suffered some kind of adverse reaction from it. But generally speaking, very low number, very rare case. Okay, so that part, fully agree with it. Then he also stated another thing which is very true, and you can refer to the Israel actually did a research on it, and it's saying that the side effects of from getting COVID is much worse than the side effects you get from the vaccine. Right, so Israel has this study. I can't remember exactly how many side effects they listed, but out of the listed side effects, I think about 8 or 10 of it, only 2 of them is more prominent if you take the vaccine. The rest of them, like even the myocarditis, is a lot worse if you get COVID, right? So if your main worry as an individual who has not taken the vaccine, if your main worry is side effects, then you should be more worried about getting COVID and the corresponding side effects. Then you should be worried about getting the vaccine and their corresponding side effects. Okay, so this part, in agreement with him. But so let's move on and we see what happens, right? So in the articles, he gives examples of France and Italy, right? So he's saying that vaccine mandates work. So he gives examples of France and Italy, where when the prime minister introduces them, the take-up rate suddenly increases by a lot. And then he goes on to say that this is a good example of vaccine mandates working. However, that's kind of a weird rationale. This is more of an example of how coercion works, right? Because you say that if you don't take the vaccine, then you can't watch the cinema. You can't go to the shopping mall. You can't go to events. Then yes, of course, more and more people will take it up because they don't want to be left out. So it's a coercion. It's not showing that the vaccine mandate work. A vaccine mandate working would be if you see the vaccines are being more and more efficient, or the efficacy is higher, and then you're convinced by it, and then you take the vaccine, right? That's an example of it working, right? You can't say that, oh, the vaccine mandate works because you force somebody to take it, and then of course they have to take it. They're being forced to, they can't enjoy the simple pleasures of life, right? So that's a very weird example that he gave. Then he gave examples of, in Singapore, how previous laws of like littering, banning of chewing gum, I think he mentioned something about Playboy. So Singapore generally we have very tough laws about that. Chewing gum, right? We all know about chewing gum. And he used it to justify then, since there were such laws on such simple things before, why can't we just accept a vaccine mandate, right? But it kind of misses the point, right? Shouldn't we first of all judge each issue based on their own merit? Is it right to have a law that says that if you litter, you should be fined? I mean, it's arguable, right? But then you end up like San Francisco, I believe, or like various states in California, like California, where people end up like shitting on the floor. So, yeah, I think some laws to make sure that people don't anyhow dump their rubbish sounds logical. But what about this vaccine? Mandating it because I'm in agreement with having laws to punish littering. Should I therefore straight away be in agreement to having laws to punish people who are not vaccinated? No, there's no correlation there. So we should look at whether or not vaccine mandates are okay. Should it be implemented, and why is it being implemented? And I think I will touch on that later on. Okay, so just because you have strict laws of from previous times, approved previously or well accepted by the population previously, doesn't mean that you can just put more laws in the future and that the population should just accept it wholeheartedly, right? We can disagree. I think we should disagree if there's something that bothers you. And another thing that he brings up is about that we have, actually in Singapore, we do have vaccine mandates for other kind of vaccines, right? So if you have a child, you would know that lots of injections for your child within the first year, then second year, and even third year, right? So things like the BCG, the MMR, there are mandates for it. I believe if you don't take these injections, you might have issues entering maybe the primary schools or something like that, right? So they are mandated. And then he said that, oh, so if we are already in acceptance of previous vaccine mandates, why can't we just accept COVID vaccine mandate? But there's clearly a very big difference between the BCG, MMR, and the COVID vaccines, right? BCG, MMR have so much history. We have not only the number, but the time that it has been in the market. We are aware of what kind of side effects, and if the event of side effects, how to treat it, right? We are aware of who, maybe, I don't know, Jay, but I would assume that there are people, that we have some data on what kind of people should avoid taking such vaccines to avoid any kind of adverse effects, right? They might be allergic, or there's some conditions that the vaccine might affect them. So we have a lot of data on this, right? What about COVID? COVID has only been, the vaccine has only been released for a year. How much data do we have? We have a lot in terms of quantity, right? Because the vaccines has been given to so many people. We are able to tell of how many people, how many of them get adverse reactions, how many of them is very severe reactions, how many of them even died. So we have the quantitative data. What we don't have is the time, right? So if you get a side effect, how long does the side effect last? Are the side effects that we have faced comprehensive? I think maybe that one, maybe we do know because of just how many people that has taken the vaccine. So that one more or less we do know. But still shouldn't be, especially for children, right? Now they're trying to, I think America is trying to push through vaccines for children under 12. Does it affect their growth? We don't know also, right? Because it's only been a year. And then pregnant women, how does it affect them? We don't really know either. I think there's a small research that I came across where two groups of pregnant women, one who had taken the COVID vaccine, one who didn't. Both groups have miscarriages, and the number between both groups aren't significantly different. So as of right now, there isn't any data that says that pregnant women, if you take the COVID vaccine, you will have a higher chance of losing your baby. That data is not there yet, right? And we don't really know, right? More importantly, how does it affect the growth of the baby once the woman is given birth? So there's still, I feel like for a mandate to be pushed, I mean it's different, right, compared to the BCG and the mRNA vaccine, where you have so much time to observe it. So let's look at some of the data that was presented in this article. He brought out data from September the 5th that as of September the 5th, only 17%, or about 930,000 people of the vaccination of the population have yet to be vaccinated. Now this 930,000 includes children under 12. So he goes through some maths, which seems reliable, right? And he came out that of the population, 9.7% are children under 12. So approximately 10%. So that means 90% of the population is above 12 years old. And then if you see, he actually stated that as of 11 October, 83% of the population is fully vaccinated. Now, he did not state anywhere in his article, but I believe right now is 85% of the country has at least one dose. So 83%, 85%, a very important number, because after you minus the 10%, which is children, you're left with 7% of the population who are not fully vaccinated, or 5% of the population who are completely not vaccinated. It means not even one dose. So you're looking at only 5% of the population who have completely not taken any vaccination at all. Okay, so this is the data that's presented. Right. So, okay, then further down, he also talks about people who have medical issues, and you see the number that is presented. It is a very small number. So basically, these are people who have taken the vaccine and have allergic reactions. So only about 1,000 person. There's a separate group of 7,000 who had allergic reactions after taking the first dose of the COVID-19. Oh, sorry, the 1,000 had previous allergic reactions to other vaccines. That means they have some kind of reactions to other vaccines, and because of that, they are careful. They do not want to take another type of vaccine just in case that they might be allergic to it also. So these people are being referred to specialists to see how else they can help them be vaccinated, or see whether there are any procedures to help them, right, with regards to COVID. So 7,001 individuals have allergic reactions after taking the first dose, right? So just now I mentioned 83% fully dosed, with 2 shots, 85% only 1 dose. So this 7,100 would be inclusive of that additional 2% that at least have 1 dose. So, and then I believe yesterday also Minister Wong stated that 1.5% of the population are unvaccinated seniors. So people who are in high-risk groups. So of that 5% that I previously talked about that are not vaccinated, only 1.5% of these people are in the seniors. So I think seniors would be consisting of people 60 and above. Right, and there's really no description about who these seniors are, right? So for myself, the first thing I think about is, firstly, are these 1.5% eligible for taking the vaccine? What do I mean by that? Are any of them going through some kind of medical procedure? Are any of them taking medication? Right, that would make, which the doctor might advise them in such an event not to then take vaccines, because you see the previous data that was presented, the only thing that they stated was 1,000 individuals who had previous allergic reactions to other vaccines. They do not talk about people who are going through medical procedures, cancer, or I don't know, maybe very severe diabetes. I don't know what kind of medical conditions would put you in a situation where you cannot take the vaccines, right? But that's something that we should consider. 1.5%. How many of this 1.5% can take the vaccine and are not taking it? Is that the majority? Is that, or of this 1.5%, maybe all of them can't take it? Right, because we know the older you get, the more comorbidities you have, health issues and the sorts. So the higher chance that you might be taking medication, the higher chance that you might be going through a medical procedure. So if these people, if they are going through such a scenario, then they can't take the vaccine, right? And then after you remove the 1.5%, then we are left with another 3.5%, right? 3.5% who are not vaccinated. Again, of this group, how many of them cannot take the vaccine? Right. One group that you might think of is pregnant women, right? Can they take the vaccine? You know for sure that they cannot take the vaccine for the first at least 22 weeks. And I believe most doctors also don't advise taking the vaccine after, I think, week 30 something, because that's where your baby starts to grow exponentially. So there's a worry that that the baby might affect the growth, I guess. So of this 3.5%, how many of them are pregnant women? And look, if you have a pregnant wife, or if you're pregnant, throughout your pregnancy, you would try to avoid as many medical procedures as possible, unless it's necessary, right? The ones that you usually take, like blood tests, I think there's this sugar test that you're supposed to take. And then most of the time you're taking supplements, right? Not medication. The only one that I can think of is the flu vaccine. So during the second trimester, they will actually say, do you want to take the flu vaccine? And it's recommended, but you don't take it. You're not being forced to take the flu vaccine, right? I think recently also Minister Ong shared a story about a lady that gave birth, of course after taking the COVID vaccine, and was a healthy baby. But really, how much study do we have with regards to pregnant women to give them the confidence that the COVID vaccine will not affect the growth of the baby? I think so this group of 3.5%, I think a good number of them would be pregnant women. There's probably a group of them, even though they're under 60, they may be going through some kind of medical procedure that would rule them out from taking a vaccine just for safety. And then of course there will be a group of people who just don't want, they just don't want the so-called anti-vaxxers, right? Okay, sure. So out of this 5%, right, how many of them actually can take the vaccine? How many of them don't want to take the vaccine? And that's the thing. But then regardless, 5% is still a very small number. So there are two main narratives here, right? Is it? So we are implementing new stringent laws to prevent unvaccinated from entering shopping malls or even to dine in at hawker center because the government says you want to protect the vulnerable who are these unvaccinated people. Sorry about that. But shouldn't the individuals have the ability to decide whether or not their individual action is safe or not, right? The narrative is also making the assumption that if I am unvaccinated, and by the way, I'm fully vaccinated, right? But if I am unvaccinated, the assumption is that I will just recklessly go out and then mix with around people and then just with no care about the fact that COVID is around and that I might get seriously ill. Are there individuals like that? I'm probably sure. I don't think it's a big portion of even at 5%, right? Especially if you're a pregnant woman who is unvaccinated, do you want to risk getting COVID by spending so much time outside? But then there are times that you have to go out, right? So say you have to go for a doctor appointment. Now they say that, okay, you can enter the mall if you have a doctor appointment. Sure. And then you enter the mall, you go see the doctor, and then because you're unvaccinated, and then you can just have a meal there while maybe waiting for your turn, or after the doctor's visit you have to go and maybe have a meal. You can't do that. You gotta go and take away and then go home, right? So it makes things very inconvenient for people who really do need it. Right? Let's not forget that this is a common space. Right? Making them look like a second-grade citizen. Right, a good example would be motorcycles. Right, we do know that motorcycles generally are more dangerous to ride on, right? Because the kind of accidents you get into are more severe, more fatal. Doesn't sound right. More likely to be fatal than say riding a car or taking a public transport. So should the government then ban motorcycles because there's a higher rate of severe injury and deaths? No, the government doesn't do that. Why? Because that's a right? Right? No, but you're both right. Okay, so there's another narrative that's indicated in this article, and it says that people who are unvaccinated are harm to society. This only works, right, if the assumption is that all unvaccinated people are carriers of COVID. Just because I'm unvaccinated, I definitely will get COVID, and then I walk past somebody and that person is going to get COVID. But that clearly isn't the case. Just because you're unvaccinated doesn't make you 100% a COVID carrier. It doesn't make you 100% that you'll be infected to begin with, right? Another assumption is that only unvaccinated carriers of COVID are contagious, which is false, right? So because we know that vaccinated people can also spread the virus. Now, I'm not saying that unvaccinated person and a vaccinated person, they have the same chance of spreading the virus, or that the viral load from are the same, right? I think there's a lot of science that says that the unvaccinated obviously will have a higher viral load and maybe probably a higher chance of spreading the virus. But then we are at, was it 83%, 85% of the population being vaccinated. The chances of you as an individual getting the virus from a vaccinated person is a lot higher than getting it from an unvaccinated person, because there's only 5% of them, right? 85% versus 5%, right? Just because as an unvaccinated individual, there's a higher chance of you passing the virus. Yes, that's true. But because the number of unvaccinated person is so much higher, and that the fact that they can still pass the virus makes it a lot higher of a chance for you as an individual to get the virus from another vaccinated individual, regardless of your vaccine status, right? So to then put the blame of the spread of the virus on this remaining 5% who have not taken the vaccines seems rather ludicrous. The rise of cases that we're seeing today is not because the 5% have been recklessly walking around spreading the virus. Because anyway, if they have been recklessly spreading around the virus, then they would have been naturally, they have some natural immunity, right? So it's kind of weird that the solution then is to then proceed to bar 5% of the population. There's a very small minority of people, and then say, oh, you cannot go into the common space. That's the solution that the government has suddenly decided to go through, even though the fact, it seems unlikely that they are the cause of the rise in cases, right? So this 5% have now become the scapegoat for all the problems that we are facing now. The increased number of cases, the suddenly increased number of deaths. We're getting like 10, 11 deaths every day. But the issue is this. We originally thought that the vaccine will lead us back to normality, right? Prior to the vaccine being available, the talk of the town was, let's reach herd immunity, which is about 70%. Of course, not necessarily in Singapore's context, but like in other places, Sweden, for example. So in America, so the idea was 70% of immunity would then reduce the possibility of spread, right? And then you enter endemic stage. But it clearly hasn't reached, because we are now at 85% of vaccination, right? So we're way past that 70% mark, and the virus is still spreading. So people are frustrated. We already locked ourselves down. We have social distancing. We have limited ourselves to the number of people going out to eat. We have vaccinated ourselves once, twice. Some are going for booster shots. Cases are still rising. Now it's starting. Hopefully we'll see a dip, and hopefully continue to dip. And it's going to continue to dip. If it continues to dip, it's not because the 5% were barred from entering shopping centers. It was because, previous measures, right? Maybe the booster shots help. Maybe. But it's not because of the 5% who are unvaccinated. So my plea is this. Stop putting the blame on the 5%. They are not the ones who are spreading the virus. If they are carriers of the virus, then they will be naturally immunized after that, right? Which by the way, that data that I've presented just throughout here does not talk about natural immunity. We don't have that data anywhere, I think. It's not available for at least not in newspapers. So can we stop blaming that 5%? Right? If you're going to say shopping centers are open, then let everybody go in. If you want to limit the number of people eating in the restaurants, 5 packs, 2 packs, whatever it is, limit across board, vaccinated, unvaccinated. Why segregate? Don't segregate. At no point does it seem to make sense or does it seem ethically right to segregate the minority. I don't know why now suddenly it becomes okay. Right. Previously, when they already segregated the unvaccinated from entering restaurants, I made the point that then they're going to start barring them from entering shopping centers and even public transport. Right. And now they're barring people from entering shopping centers. And I had a friend posted that asked, why are they still allowing unvaccinated people on the public transports? Of course, the minister will say, no, public transport, very well ventilated, so we don't have to worry about it. And hopefully we really don't go to that step. But before that, let's not segregate, right? Let's just allow people to go on with their normal lives, take responsibility for their own lives. If I am unvaccinated, I want to enter a mall to go to a shopping center, to go to a supermarket. Right, the nearest supermarket to my place is in a shopping mall. I can just walk there, go to the supermarket, buy stuff, come home quickly. Now, because I cannot go to the shopping mall, I have to travel further away. Maybe it requires me to take a bus, put me at more risk because I'm in more confined space. And then I enter an area where supposedly now more unvaccinated people is. Doesn't make sense, man. Come on. So hopefully this is a plea that more people will support. Okay, thank you.